of TriTech University. My name is Bill Steppen, and today we're going to continue our quarantine series, I guess you could say, on the tab function within the AIM program for point of sale applications. The tab function is mainly there for those of you who might have a need to track some kind of short-term accrual of a balance that needs to change over time, may need to be modified, and ultimately is going to be cashed out, usually within that same day. First and foremost, so as always, just a few ground rules for you to be able to interact with me using GoToWebinar as we are. There is going to be a control panel where you have the ability to manipulate your screen, the size of my webcam versus the screen display, things like that. There's also a questions box in there. I have the questions box basically open on my screen at all times. So if you have any questions regarding the content of today's material, feel free to post that question in that questions box. I will be browsing that throughout the day and making sure I answer those as we go. If that GoToWebinar toolbar is taking up too much screen real estate and you'd like to shrink it down so that you have an easier time seeing myself and the screen, there's going to be a little button on that control panel. It's like a little orange button with a white arrow on it. That's what it should look like. You can click on that and shrink it down and get the GoToWebinar toolbar out of the way. And then at any point, you can click on that again to bring it back open. So without further ado, let's go ahead and talk a little bit about tabs. Now, if you installed version 12 from scratch, you may already have a tabs menu set up. But basically what it is it's a place in point of sale where you can have a button that effectively tracks an ongoing transaction. The best way probably to explain it for someone would be if you go to the local pub and you start a tab. That's the same basic concept of it. Now, that doesn't have to be used exclusively for that situation. You could have a number of different environments in retail operations where a tab might take effect or be useful. Some examples I like to give would be obviously the main things like short order little cafes and stuff like that. If you've got those handy, maybe with a little coffee kiosk and things of that nature within the store. Other situations might be short order service work where the person comes in, places an order for some kind of quick service, and they're going to browse around the store while that service is being placed. Maybe if you have like a framing studio or things of that nature within the store. Just some of these kind of little ideas that might be beneficial as you think about this. We're going to take a look at the setup of how tabs work, and then we'll take a look at the doings of them. As pretty much always, we're going to go ahead and jump into maintenance. And in this case, we're going to look at general maintenance. And pretty much these are exclusively set up as menus and buttons. So we're going to go straight into point of sale menus, as you've probably seen me do. What we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and take a look at the tabs menu. On the tabs menu, we've got a number of tabs kind of set up here as a placeholder for point of sale. Now, in my scenario here, these are kind of shaped like tables. So I've got basically 15 tables where I can have up to 15 tabs going at any given time. I've got these named very simply. They're just basically tabs 1 through 15. And above these, I have 6 little buttons kind of exclusive to manipulating tabs. I can rename existing tabs. I can delete a tab if I want to cancel it. I can associate and tokenize a credit card with a tab. I can split out a tab. I can print a tab, and I can combine a tab. And I guarantee you by the end of this session, you'll be sick and tired of hearing me say tab. But that's kind of the idea of it. Now, the setup of these buttons are very straightforward. I'm going to go ahead and right-click on one, and you can see that the button type is plain and simply tab. And then I can give it a default name here on the button setup, And then the other thing that I can do here is I can give it a caption. Of course, the caption is just what the button will say when it's not in use. That's kind of the idea of that. Up along the top for these other buttons, if I go ahead and take a look at their functions, these are primarily going to be function keys. And down below for the function keys, we've got, in this case, rename tab. If I look at this one, you can see it's for delete tab. For this one, if I right click on the actual button instead of constantly missing with my mouse, you can see this is going to be attach CC credit card to tab. The next one will be split tab. And then the last two, if you're probably picking up on the pattern, print tab. And then last but not least, combine tab. Now, I don't know if we've added any other tab functions to the point of sale since this has been set up. If they would be, then going down this list, we would find anything with tab. And what we can do as a shortcut is we can go ahead and press F6 on this drop-down function. And then this will bring up an item table here. And I'll just go ahead and type in tab. And this will basically find anything that results in working with tabs. So the only other option would be to find a tab. So that would be another button that you might want to add if you're going to have a lot of tabs, especially if you're going to have multiple pages worth of tabs. That's kind of the idea behind that. The rest of them I've basically got all set up here. So hopefully that makes sense. Really, at this point, there's no other setup specific to tabs needed. The only other thing to really consider would be, like I was kind of alluding to a few moments ago, is you'll just want to make sure you have at least as many buttons for as potentially as many tabs as you may need to be carrying and tracking at any given time. So let's go ahead and hop out to point of sale and take a look at how this works. I'm going to go straight into a quick sale. And in my quick sale, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and ring up some items. And again, these might be inventory items. These might be non-inventory items. Let's say instead of it being a bottle of valve oil and $15 worth of service labor, let's pretend this is fries and a Coke or a bucket of balls or just basically all these different things. When I say bucket of balls, this would be like for a driving range at a golf course. You know, you buy the bucket of balls, maybe you go back and you buy a second bucket of balls and a third bucket of balls. Just all these different scenarios that might play out into this. I'm going to go ahead and start a tab for this customer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to the main menu, and I'm going to go ahead and go to my tabs menu. And I'm going to choose a tab and start one. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and say it's tab 1. It's going to go ahead and ask me for a tab name. So I'm going to go ahead and call this Bill. I'll go ahead and click OK. And what you'll see happen is basically it's going to go ahead and kind of close out that transaction, but temporarily. You'll see that over now on that tab button, it's showing me the name of the tab and the total amount. So basically now at this point, if I was going to continue on with another sale, let's say that we're going to ring up a couple of other items here. Let's say a music stand. Let's also do another service. Let's do an outside service labor of $25 in this case. And I'll go ahead and I'll start up a second tab for the next customer that walked in. So we'll go and now go ahead to look to, let's say, tab 8. And this is now Kelly. And so basically, again, the idea here is that you can see the tab names and the tab amounts at any given time. Now, what I'm going to do is go back into a point of sale, but let's say now what I do is I want to add on to an existing tab. I can go to the tab menu, I can click on the tab, and that will pull it back into the point of sale. So you can see up here at the top, it's letting me know I'm still in point of sale mode. Now I'm working with the bill tab. Bill here, not the, the bill to be paid, although I would like to be paid. It's basically got all this activity associated with it. And what I'd like to do now is I'd like to go ahead and let's say add a second valve oil. So I'll go ahead and scan another bottle of valve oil. He's really tearing through the valve oil during this time. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to update that tab by clicking on the same tab button. Click, and you'll see it goes from 1848 to 2196. So basically, it lets me add on to that tab at any given time. I can do the same thing for Kelly. I can click on the Kelly tab, and that will go ahead and pull that tab back in. There we go. Oops, I clicked on new service ticket. We're jumping all over the place here. Let me let my computer catch up with me, and now I will click on that tab and pull in the Kelly tab. And let's go ahead and bring up some more service. Let's say instead of doing a service, let's say that she's going to need some service parts. Again, I don't really have a whole lot of functional kind of concept buttons for a tab in this music shop type setup that I have, but just kind of play along with the concept of the function and think about maybe creative ways in which this could be helpful for you and your staff throughout your daily sales process. So let's go ahead and say we're going to add on, $10 worth of service parts. And again, same thing. I'll go back to the tab and I will re-update that tab. So I'll go ahead and click on that, and that will resave the tab now for the new amount of $51.48. Notice that really at no point have I kind of associated these with a customer account. You really don't need customer accounts in order to make use of tabs. Now, that being said, I certainly could do that. If I'm going to go ahead and do that, what I can do is I'll just go ahead and click on the Sold To button here, and let's pull up an actual customer account. So now we've got Mike Anderson here. And let's go ahead and start a tab for Mike. So we will go ahead and do, let's say, some pads here. Let's actually go ahead and we'll right click and edit that. And we'll just go ahead and say that that's not one tab or one pad, that's 10 pads. So we'll save that just to make it a little bit easier. And we'll go ahead and put that on a tab. Let's say he's at tab 4. So we'll go ahead and put in Mike and hit OK. And now what you'll notice is if I go ahead and just go back to a normal point of sale, quick sale with no specific customer account, you'll see it says this is currently sold to cash sale. If I go back to the tab and I pull Mike's tab in, you'll see that it automatically brings up the fact that this was attached to Mike Anderson's account. So that's kind of the idea of the tab function. You don't have to worry about preloading in a customer account in order to pull them back in and pull up their tab. Kathy is asking a great question. What is the difference between tab and a suspend sale? And excellent question. The main reason or the main difference between the two is that a tab can be opened and manipulated and resaved a multitude of times. Really, there's no limit to the number of times that a tab can be open, modified, and resaved. Whereas a suspend sale, really, you can only suspend a sale one time. So that is kind of the main difference between the two. Also, the other main difference is a suspend sale doesn't have to have all these buttons established for it. A suspend sale is really just a transaction that's kind of saved in the background that can then be pulled in via the reload suspend sale function in the functions menu. For those of you who aren't sure what Kathy is talking about, there is also a function on any given transaction where one of the main buttons that you'll have over on the left-hand toolbar here is the ability to suspend a sale, which again doesn't really need a button for it, but as I was alluding to, you really can only really suspend a sale one time. And the main reason why you might suspend a sale is, let's say a customer brings everything up to the register and they got everything ready to go and they reach for their wallet and they realize to their horror that, oh crap, they left their wallet in the car. So it was like, oh, so sorry, I left my wallet in the car. Can I go get it? Sure, no, not a problem. You can suspend that sale and that frees up that register for processing other transactions, at which point when they return to pay for their sale, you can use the reload suspended sale in and pull that sale back in to take final payment. We have had some customers use that for kind of they bring some items up to the counter and then they continue browsing and then they maybe bring some more items up, but you can really only do that one time. So thank you so much, Kathy, for the question. So that being said, Let's take a look at some other functions now with these tabs. So let's go back to the tab menu, and I've got Mike's tab pulled in here. Let's say that I wanted to print a copy of that tab for Mike to have so that he could have that ahead of his final payment. Let's just go ahead and print that to the screen. And you'll kind of see this in the form of basically a sales invoice printout. You can see how this is going to come up and specifically say check. And it's just going to let us basically know what the details of the transaction are. So we've got the 10 pads on there for a total, a tax, and a subtotal, and a balance due. And then down below, we've got a signature line, just kind of some things like that. If you're wondering where the whole idea of check comes from, if we go ahead and let's hop out quickly, we'll just use the drop-down menus up here into maintenance and general. Let's take a look at the system comments. And the idea of system comments here is these are basically all the different receipt types that you have in the system. And if we go down and find basically a tab option in here, I'm trying to remember specifically what it is called. Let's just see if we've got a quick search here for tabs or checks or anything like that. And offhand, I am not remembering exactly what the receipt type is for that, but basically anything that has a printout like that, for example, sales invoices, we'll just use that as the example. There's always a receipt header, and the receipt header is basically what would print at the top of the printout. So if you're wondering where that came from, that's where that's coming from. Kathy has a follow-up question. If we are working on ringing up a large transaction and have one register, would it make more sense to use tabs instead of suspend sales? And that's kind of an excellent question, Kathy. There's actually a number of different strategies that you could implement in that respect. What you may want to consider is this is kind of getting off the topic of tabs, but if you really don't necessarily want to have a bunch of tabs that you're trying to track, you could ring up a large transaction if you needed to come back to it over the course of several different instances. You could ring it up in the form of a proposal, because proposals have the ability to be modified and saved a number of times prior to them being invoiced. So that's one strategy you could use. Basically, a proposal just kind of has values of items to an account that can then be modified over the course of time. And the usual situation you might use that is to go back and forth with the customer on a large scale order for some kind of quote that you want to give them. So that's another strategy that you could think of as opposed to using tabs or using the suspend sale option, which again we've talked about could really only be used one time. So we saw how we can print a tab. Let's just kind of look at some of these other options. We still have Mike's tab loaded in here. Let's go ahead and say maybe he wanted to split that out. So we could basically put in how many number of ways we want to split it. And let's just go ahead and say it's 2. And then what that would let us do is that would bring up a little split tab option here. So what we could do is we could then go ahead and say we want to split this any number of ways. We could split it evenly, like you see the option down below. I'm trying to get my questions bar out of the way here. So we could say split evenly, and you can see how it basically does 5 and 5. The other thing that we could do is kind of drag this around and do things of that nature. So basically what you can do is kind of manipulate items in that way. Ultimately, if I hit save on that, what that would ultimately show me is you can see how it now says Mike, and I don't have enough room on the on the button itself, but it's basically tab 1 of 2 and tab 2 of 2. And if I click on that, we can see what those amounts are, and then they're currently have an open status. So I could select, let's say, the first tab and work on that one, and you'll see it pulls up over here the 5 pads. And if I wanted to add something to this tab, I certainly could do that. Let's just go ahead and add one more RT14 and click on that button one more time to save that. And I'll close that and click it back open again. At least I will try to as my menus catch up with me. So we'll go back to the tab, click on that again, and you can see that, well, let's see, it's we'll bring back that tab there. And all right, so did not do what I expected it to do there. I may have to look into that a little bit more. But the idea with that is basically you've got several tabs now on one that are kind of split in whichever different ways you want. So again, if you had like a short order area and you wanted to split the plate of fries, because everyone likes to order fries for the table, just kind of that idea. Again, probably not something you would do in a music store environment, but that's kind of the function of it. If you wanted to tack on a card to this, by clicking the card function, you can then pull up your credit card merchant and tokenize a card to that, so that way you can guarantee that you've got a card saved to that tab for a final payout without having to ask them for their method of payment at the end. And obviously, I'm not going to tokenize a card here on the transaction, but that would be how you can do that. So I'm just going to go ahead and cancel that. Let's say that, you know what, he's done with that. The food was horrible. The golfing stank, whatever it might have been. We're going to honor them the ability to cancel out their tab. So with it selected, we can go ahead and delete it. And it's just letting us know that if we do delete this, this would delete all of the split tabs because we had started off that as a split tab. So let's go ahead and say yes to that. And of course, it's saying we could not delete that tab. So a couple of things I'll have to check into here. I'm going to go ahead and make a few notes for myself. Okay. So a few other things here just with the tab. Let's go ahead and just kind of close this one out. So when you click on the tab to bring it back in, basically the tab at this point, just like any other point of sale transaction, is ready to tender. So you go ahead and click the tender button, and we'll just go ahead and we'll take a cash payment on the first tab, 1 of 2 there. We'll finalize that out. We'll go ahead and we'll print that to the screen just so you can kind of see, again, the flow of this process. This shouldn't be really any different from any other transaction if you've been using the program diligently up to this point. So we've got all the details there. And what we will now notice is if we go back into point of sale, into quick sale, let's take a quick look at the tabs menu. And we can see now all that's really left there is tab 2 of 2. So we can see that the first one is now paid. The second one is open. Let's go ahead and select that one. And we'll go ahead and we will tender that one as well. We'll say that that one was paid. We'll just make it an even $6. So we'll hit the 5 and the 1 for $6 in cash. We'll go ahead and close that one. I'm not going to worry about printing that one to the screen. And now what we're going to see, of course, there's the change due. By the way, real quick side tangent. If you were in attendance to the point of sale webinar I did several weeks ago, and you might, if you were in attendance, you might recall that I was in version 12. I had kind of slipped out of my mind where the option of setting up where the change due would display. I did find that pretty much immediately afterward on miscellaneous for the workstation on miscellaneous tab 4. If you'd like the change to pop up, you can come in here and check mark to display how much the change is, and then you can manipulate it a little bit with the font name and the size and the width and the color and all of that stuff. So I thought I would just mention that since that happened to pop up there. Let's go back into quick sale, stay on our course here. And now what we're going to notice back on the tabs menu is that tab has now reverted back to being an open tab for someone else to use. So basically, once everything is paid in full on that, it's cleared out and ready to be used for something else. So now let's say if we wanted to combine Bill and Kelly's tabs and go ahead and click on Bill to load his tab in, we can click on combine. And then basically we're going to click on the next tab. So by clicking on the next tab, that will go ahead and combine those 2 tabs. So then I'll go ahead and close that out, and you'll see it's now showing back on the tabs menu that total amount into the tab that I originally opened. So basically it kind of took Kelly's name away, put it all onto the tab 1 for the name of Bill. So just basically something to think about there if you want to make sure you combine them appropriately. Whichever one you click on first is going to be the place it gets combined into, and then you can draw from any other tabs. If you have multiple tabs to combine, you just basically do that process several times where you start, click on the tab to reopen it, click combine, click the next tab, and that will go ahead and combine them all up. And again, just to kind of see if you needed to rename this one to now be Bill and Kelly, you can click the rename button and we'll say this is going to be Bill and Kelly. And we go ahead and click OK, and that will ultimately now say Bill and Kelly on the tab. And then from there, we can go ahead and close that one out as well by hitting tender and ultimately taking payment on it. So that's kind of the idea of tabs. Again, maybe this will be helpful for you. Maybe it's something to consider for down the stretch if you are planning on offering maybe any types of tabbable services down the road. So something to think about. If you can't use it now, maybe you can use it later. Obviously, all of these webinars are complimentary as part of your monthly maintenance with us, so they're free for you to browse at any point down the road if you want to revisit them. They're all available in the member portal. Speaking of upcoming webinars, we've got one on Thursday going into the inventory export and import utility, kind of doing a deep dive on that. I know a number of you are already registered for that, so that's awesome. As of this morning, I have 2 more weeks of webinars planned, so definitely check out our member portal on the webinars page to see what those are and register for them if you feel they'd be beneficial. In a nutshell, it's going to be next week looking at the QuickBooks setup between AIMS accounting and the QuickBooks accounting. We'll also be looking at vendor tips and tricks. So kind of take a look at how you can just get the most out of the vendors that you're tracking, how to set them up a little bit more efficiently, all the different things that I can think of that will help you find things that maybe you never knew existed with the accounts payable vendor system. The following week after that, we'll take a look at the delayed delivery feature of point of sale, an oft overlooked function that's with every basic package of AIMS complete point of sale utility. We'll take a look at why you might use that, why you might consider it over other types of transaction modes, and how to make the most of that. We'll wrap up that week with a look into accounts payable invoice discounts. If your vendors offer discounts for early payment, we'll take a look at how you can take advantage of those so that you don't lose out on what is essentially free money for early payment. So things to consider there as well. As always, if there are any webinar suggestions that you can think of, pass them along to me. Email them to training@tritechretail.com. Give us a call into support or into sales if you want to discuss it. You can talk to me if I'm available. Otherwise, just let a technician or a representative know what your idea is, and they will pass it along for me. Anything else we can do for you, just give us a call and let us know. Communication is key, as always, and never more than now. So let us know what we can do for you. Thank you again so much for your attendance and for your questions. If there's anything we can do, just let us know, like I said. Otherwise, that is all for today's session. Thank you so much for attending, and we'll see you next time.